Hi and welcome to Teach the Table. I'm Nathan and this is Tigris and Euphrates. Set in 3000 BC in Mesopotamia, all players will be creating, expanding, and destroying kingdoms across the map with plenty of conflict along the way. In reality, it's more like an abstract strategy game with the ultimate goal of having the most points in the end. The game contains tiles of 4 different colors, and these can net players victory point tokens of the same color, which are hidden behind your player screen so no one else can see them. However, at the end of the game, you only get to count the points in the color you have the least of, so you need to gain adequate amounts of all the colors to win. Also, there are these treasures, which are unpainted cubes, and these count as points in any color, which can be assigned at the end of the game. So they're kind of like wilds. Each player has a different destiny represented by a symbol, and they have 4 leaders, one of each color, which are going to be associated with the tiles of the same color. There's one last bit of terminology on the board. Any lone or connected tiles are called a region, and once there's a leader present in a region, that becomes a kingdom. And this is important because now it can score points and lead to conflict if there are ever 2 leaders of the same color in the kingdom. Going clockwise around the table, each player can take 2 actions, and they can both be the same if you like. The options are placing, moving, or removing a leader on the board, placing a tile onto the board, playing one of their 2 catastrophe tiles, or discarding and redrawing tiles that are behind their screen. At the end of a turn, each player should draw tiles from this bag to get back up to 6 tiles, and this will repeat until the bag is empty, or if there are only 1 or 2 of these treasures still out on the board. The first possible action is positioning a leader. Now, this can be placing a new leader onto the board, moving one that already exists, or removing one from the board entirely. A leader can be put on any empty space on the board as long as it's next to one of these red temple tiles. It cannot be put on a river space, and it can't be placed if it unites 2 separate kingdoms. In this example, this would be a legal move because this is a kingdom and this is a region, so you're not connecting 2 kingdoms. But if this already existed, you cannot place one here because you already have a kingdom, and this would be connecting the 2 kingdoms. At any point in the game, if a leader is no longer connected to a red temple, if this tile was removed, for instance, then the leader would just come off the board and go back to the player who owns it. Another action is placing a tile from behind your screen out on the board. A tile can be placed on any empty space that doesn't have a river on it, with the exception that these blue farm tiles must be placed on a river. Placing a tile connected to a kingdom can earn 1 victory point to the player who has a leader of that same color in the kingdom. So take note, this is not always going to be a point to the player who places the tile, it's to the player who owns the leader. So try not to give points to other players. And in this case, it would be 1 red victory point that goes to me since I'm the bull. However, if no leader of that color is in the kingdom and there is a black leader, the black leader is known as the king. And so he's always going to get to scoop up that point. It'd still be a red point, but it's going to go to the player who owns the black one in this case, since there's no red leader there. Unlike placing a leader, you can place a tile to unite 2 separate kingdoms. However, this tile will not net any points for anyone. Instead, your unification tile goes on top to show that there's 2 kingdoms that are being united as one down on that spot. Then you need to check if this newly unified kingdom contains 2 leaders of the same color. In this case, it does. So that means there's going to be an external conflict or a war, which I'll show you soon. Once the conflicts are resolved, the unification token comes off and goes back to the player who placed it there. You can never use a tile to unite more than 2 kingdoms at a time. A maximum of 2 kingdoms can be united. Another aspect of placing a tile is that if you create a 2x2 grid of the same color tiles, then you'll get to flip those over and place a monument that contains that color, in this case red. After flipping the tiles, choose the monument that you want to play there, and any treasures that were there are going to go back on the tile that they were on. Again, this one's not connected to a red temple tile, so he's going to have to be removed. Monuments are made up of 2 colors, and how those work is at the end of each player's turn, they get to check and see if they have any leaders in the kingdom that are corresponding to that color of monument. If so, they gain a victory point for each one. So it's a way to get points each round. The third possible action is playing a catastrophe tile. This will permanently negate any space you play it on, be it an empty space or on top of a tile. It can't be placed on top of a leader or a space that has a treasure tile or a monument, but you can use it to block tiles spreading across the board or to rip a kingdom into 2. The last action you can take is swapping tiles, by simply discarding a number of tiles to the box and drawing back up until you have 6. Besides helping you get better tiles, this is also a good way to empty the bag of tiles if you want the game to end sooner. So let's talk about conflicts now. There's two types of conflicts in Tigris and Euphrates. Internal, which are called revolts, and external, which are wars. In both cases, the player who initiates the conflict or the closest player in player order is going to be the attacker, and a tie is always won in favor of the defender. So try not to attack unless you're sure that you're going to win. Internal conflicts or revolts happen within one kingdom. When a leader is placed in a kingdom that already contains a leader of the same color, players compare how many red temples they have adjacent to their leaders. In this case, 2 and 2, so it's a tie. The attacker starts by discarding any red tiles from behind their player screen that they like to increase their number. So that makes him 3. Then the defending player can do the same, and all he needs to do is at least tie to win. So in this case, it's 3-3, and I would lose the conflict. The loser removes their leader from the board, and the winner gains 1 red victory point, since internal conflicts always revolve around the red temples. External conflicts or wars occur when 2 kingdoms are united by a tile and there are 2 leaders of the same color in the newly unified kingdom. If more than 2 colors are involved, the active player chooses first which one to resolve. In a war, players compare how many tiles that match the color of the leaders are on their side of the unification tile. So in this case, the bull has 3 black tiles and the lion has none. Next, the attacker can discard tiles of that color to bump up their total, and then the defender can do the same. In this case, the attacker will discard 1, the defender discards none, so the defender will lose. Naturally, wars are much bloodier than revolts, so the loser not only removes their leader from the board, but any tiles that match that color on their side of the original kingdom would get removed as well. In this case, there aren't any black tiles to remove. The winner is going to get 1 point, so 1 black point for removing the player's leader, and 1 point for each black tile that got removed. In this case, it's only 1 black point total. Removing tiles from the board can greatly affect the structure of a kingdom, so the next step after a war is resolved is to check if any more conflicts exist. If they don't, take back the unification tile and play continues. Obviously, wars are a major way to get some victory points in this game, but there's one more thing you haven't seen, and that's how to gain these treasures. There are 10 treasures out on the map at the beginning of the game, 1 on each of the starting temples, but they can't be gained until a kingdom contains more than 1 of them, like in this case. Once a kingdom has more than 1 treasure in it, in this case there's 3 treasures in this kingdom, then the player who has their green leader, the traitor in it, gets to take all but 1 of those treasures off the board. This player has mostly a free choice on which treasures they want to take from that kingdom. However, if one of the 4 treasures closest to the corners of the board is one of the options, they have to take that one. So in this case, this one's closest to the corner of the board. This one would have to be one that they take, and then they can choose one of those as well. That's all the rules to the game. So just to recap on where points come from, having your leader in a kingdom where a tile of the same color is placed will net you 1 victory point of that color. Having an internal conflict or a revolt will net the victor 1 red victory point. External conflicts or wars will get the victor variable number of victory points. And at the end of your turn, each of your leaders that's in a kingdom linked to a monument matching that color is going to get 1 victory point of that color. Again, after a player's taken their 2 actions, all players will replenish up to 6 tiles, so they're always going to have 6 tiles at the beginning of each player's turn. And at the end of a turn, if only 1 or 2 treasures are left out on the board, or if the tile bag is empty and not able to replenish everyone, then the game is over. Allocate your treasures like wilds to any of the colors that you like, and only the points from your weakest color are going to count as your score. If there is a tie, the players compare their next weakest color, and so on. And that's how you play Tigris and Euphrates. Keep in mind there is a newer version of the game with different artwork than this one, but it's all the same rules that I just explained to you. I hope this video was helpful. If it was, please subscribe to my channel and ring that bell if you want notifications of all my new videos. You can also check the description below for an alphabetical list of all the games that I've covered. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to have fun.